Hello, and welcome to my channel. Try this as a series breaking down a certain game or playstyle of a game. Today we're going to be talking Commander and bringing down Go-Shintai of Life's Origin. The video is broken down into chapters which you can find in the description or in the timeline. I'll be briefly covering Life's Origin, then cover some win conditions and how we'll get there. I'll talk about some mana base and card draw strategies. I'll discuss other synergistic cards in the deck and why I think they'll help. I'll cover some other cards I cut from my example list, why they didn't fit my list but they might fit yours. And finally, I'll move on to some budget suggestions for the deck. If you enjoy this content, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It really helps other viewers discover the content I produce and is a great way to show support. With that said, let's dive in. Go-Shintai of Life's Origin is a 3/4 enchantment shrine creature that costs 3 in green. It has an activated ability that costs Wooburg and tap it to return target enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Also, whenever it or another non-token shrine enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 colorless shrine enchantment creature token. I think a lot of players were excited when this commander came out because it is a true shrine commander. Shrines used to be sort of a meme jank deck, but now with the newer shrines and this commander can be a huge powerhouse tribe. Go-Shintai is a little slow to build up, but is a solid battlecruiser deck that's really difficult to deal with once it gets going. Go-Shintai is probably most famous for being a shrine commander, but honestly it is a really flexible card that you can build around for any enchantment type theme. I've seen some pretty cool decks built around sagas and just value enchantments, however I'm going to focus on shrines for the video and my example list. A quick note before we begin, shrine is an enchantment type, not a creature type. Changelings do not count towards your shrine count. Also, Go-Shintai, the tokens it creates, and the other creature shrines do not have any creature type. Creature tribal cost reductions do not apply to any of these cards. We're going to jam out shrines onto the battlefield to win with their various effects. I'm running every shrine released for Magic in this deck, so we should have plenty of options to bring in the win. Our best shrine by far is Sanctum of All, which can not only get whatever we need on upkeep, but will likely cause our shrines to trigger multiple times. This shrine doesn't win on its own, but it is the most reliable tutor in the deck. We could win with either of the red shrines that deal damage. Both of these cards can dish out a ton of damage, and with Sanctum of All will trigger multiple times. We could assemble a huge board state with either the ETB trigger on our commander, Honden of Life's Web, or Go-Shintai of Shared Purpose. There are 17 shrines in this deck, including our commander, and we can generate even more with our commander's ability. Any of these cards can generate a huge board state so we can beat down our opponents. The shrine we're most likely to win with though is Sanctum of Stonefangs. This is by far the most efficient shrine for bringing us the win. It hits every opponent and can also gain us a ton of life. Since Sanctum of All can tutor for it on upkeep, we'll even get the trigger for it on the same turn since this goes off in our first main phase. With the massive amount of shrines we can jam onto the battlefield, the Sanctum will trigger it twice, and it's entirely possible we will win the second this hits the field. Starting off is the auto includes in Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, and Thematic Compass. I've always found Thematic Compass to be a reliable card at any point in the game. It can help ensure land drops in early to mid game and then flip into a strictly better Maze of It to protect us from Voltron commanders and other problem creatures. To help them out, I'm running Birds of Paradise and Sanctum Weaver. The Weaver is incredibly powerful in this deck with all the enchantments in the list. It can easily ramp us into anything in our hand and is probably the best mana dork in the deck. Steve and Sanctum of Fruitful Harvest are 2 cards that ramp us in early game. The Green Sanctum scales up with our deck to be effective at any point in the game. Even if it was the only shrine in our field, it would be welcome in early game and push us into casting our commander. Skyclave Relic and Mirari's Wake are 2 cards that can also scale with our board state. Mirari's Wake is a bit overkill for this deck. We don't really need a ton of mana, but it does buff our creatures. With all the shrine creature tokens we can make, this can be a substantial power swing for us later in the game. Smothering Tithe is always a solid card in any deck that can run it. Being an enchantment, we can recur it with our commander if needed. Treasures are welcome in 5-color decks and will help snowball the shrine engine. Chromatic Lantern, Dryad of the Elysium Grove, and World Tree are all cards that will completely fix our mana. This deck doesn't have a complex mana base as most of our cards in the list are 1 or 2 mana pips. Honestly, these cards provide more peace of mind for me. Not having to worry about what I'm tapping my mana for lets me focus more on the board state and chatting with other players at the table. Nature's Lore, Skyshroud Claim, and Tempt of Discovery wraps up the ramp section in this deck. These cards are some of my favorite ramp spells in green. All can get lands untapped so we can follow them up with other plays. Tempt of Discovery always sparks some conversations with your opponent and provides some more interaction. Enchantress decks are normally good at card draw, and this deck is no different. Enchantress's Presence and Sithis are both solid cards in any enchantment-focused list. With 30 enchantments in this deck, including our commander, these could both provide us with a ton of cards throughout the game. The Blue Honden and Sanctum Shrines both have the potential for massive card draw. The Blue Honden is pretty risky in this deck. It isn't a May trigger, and with all the shrines we could potentially make, it could easily deck you if you're not careful. Some staples in Esper Sentinel and Rhystic Study are also on the list. If Rhystic Study is ever removed, we can easily get it back with our commander's ability. As far as budget cuts go, either of these would probably be fine to cut. The other cards I've mentioned so far and the next card are all really budget friendly. These two cards are both amazing, but they aren't really needed in an Enchantress deck. Last up is Eidolon of Blossoms as another powerhouse draw effect in this deck. With our commander and all the tokens it creates being enchantments, this card will provide us with plenty of value. Starting off is Destiny Spinner, and again as two creatures that synergize very well with our deck. As an enchantment, Destiny Spinner is also a creature we can get back to field with our commander. The activated ability will actually be very powerful in this deck as well, but it shouldn't be needed for the win. Again is another creature that can recur our enchantments. It can actually pseudo-flicker our enchantments also. You can target the same card you sacrifice with his ability to bring it back to the field. This makes him an effective creature to recur our shrines, flicker them for our commander's ETB effect, and also protect them from other removal effects. Spark Double and Sphere of Safety are two more amazing cards in this list. Spark Double can get any of our creatures, but it's pretty much here for the commander. This doubles up our shrine production and basically acts as redundancy against removal. Sphere of Safety is an amazing protection enchantment we can recur with our commander. Since it cares about all of our enchantments and not just shrines, the tax effect will likely be so high our opponents will struggle to swing anything into us. The White Sanctum and Honden will also help protect us from our opponents. The Honden can pad our life so much we're basically only threatened by combo and Voltron decks. The Sanctum can easily tap down any creature that could threaten us also. Since we have so many shrines, it's pretty likely this ability will only cost 1 white mana. With all the color fixing in this list, having whatever mana we need shouldn't be a problem either. The black Go-Shintai and red Sanctum are both shrines that play into our strategies and have useful removal effects. They aren't strictly destroy effects, but they will likely be able to take care of most threats you'll run into in Commander with all the shrines this deck can produce. I've added Imprison in the Moon and Song of the Dryads as two pseudo removal cards. These cards are both effective cards in any Enchantress deck and are very reliable with our commander. We can fetch it out of the graveyard at instant speed using Life Origin's ability and take care of whatever our opponents throw out. I'm running quite a few tutor cards in my list. Enlightened Tutor and Entomb are solid cards in this deck. We can get out most of our relevant cards with Enlightened Tutor. Entomb can synergize with our commander's ability to get something onto the field at instant speed. I'm also running Vampiric, Demonic, and Profane tutors in this deck to tutor for whatever is needed or the finishing shrines. Cutting these or the previously mentioned tutors is probably a good idea to lower the power of your deck, but I was intending to build this as a little stronger list. I found shrines to be sort of a battlecruiser archetype that takes a while to turn on. I felt having additional tutors made sense to ensure it was constantly a threat. However, with the exception of Profane, these are pretty expensive tutors and would be easy budget cuts or cuts to balance with your pod. I'm running some protection effects in Lightning Greaves, Swiftfoot Boots, and Privileged Position. Being an enchantment, Privileged Position is something we can pull from our graveyard in response to any removal effects. To wrap it up, I'm running Lithoform Engine and mostly just to double the Shrine's effects. Since all Shrines are legendary, copying them wouldn't be very helpful in this deck, though you could still copy them in response to counterspells to ensure you still get the Shrine. The cutting room floor is where I talk about some cards around or over $10 at the time of recording that I cut from my list for various reasons but are worth mentioning to run. Though these cards didn't find a home in my list, they might find a home in yours. First off is the two Shakashimas as two more ways to copy our commander. I thought Spark Double was enough in this list and I wanted to save the slots for other cards that synergize with enchantments and shrines. This deck should produce plenty of token shrines even without making copies of Life's Origin. Similarly, two more cards that could be useful are Doubling Season and Parallel Lives. These would double up the shrines our commander produces and the tokens the white Go-Shintai and green Honden make. Personally, I never had an issue making a ton of shrines in this deck, and Sanctum of All already doubles all these triggers. These are mostly just win more cards, and I don't think either is needed in the list. All the same, they are both reliable token doublers that our commander can recur, making them solid cards in this deck. Last up is Thassa Deep Dwelling and Panharmonicon that can abuse our commander's ETB effect to produce more shrines. This list isn't really ETB focused and abusing our commander's effect isn't needed with all the shrines already in the deck. Either of these cards would be welcome if the deck is stalling out and is probably worth running if you decide to cut all the tutors from the list. To Teleportation Circle and Conjurer's Closet both flicker our creature shrines if you want to play into the ETB effect more. Again, I don't really think effects like these are needed in this list unless you want to play into that theme. Mesa and Verdurian Enchantresses are 2 more budget draw effects that synergize with all the enchantments in this list. These cards can easily replace Esper Sentinel and Rhystic Study if those cards don't fit your budget. Jukai Naturalist has a blanket cost reduction for all of our enchantments. With so many in the list, we'd get plenty of mileage with this card. The deck runs a pretty aggressive mana base, and the highest CMC of an enchantment is 5. The cost reduction probably isn't needed, but it's a solid budget card that can save you some mana for Life's Origin's recursion ability or something else. Calyx Destiny's Hand is a solid planeswalker in this deck. With so many enchantments in this deck, all of his abilities would be useful throughout the game. His removal effect would be especially useful as there's plenty of options to tuck our opponent's creatures and enchantments under. I didn't cover every card in this deck or every suggestion I have for Go-Shintai of Life's Origin, so if you'd like to see the rest, check out the deck list in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider clicking the like button and subscribing to the channel. Comment below on cards you think synergize well with this commander, and if you have any suggestions for commanders to build in the future. Thank you so much for watching, good luck, and have fun.